My name is Isabella Cross, and I am 41 years old. I hadn't spoken a single word when my father decided to destroy me. She hasn't worked a day in her life since college, he declared under oath, his voice ringing through the courtroom. And now she's stealing from her own dead mother. 9 jurors watched him, people who had known him for decades, long before I ever existed. Not one of them questioned him. I didn't react. I simply lifted the thin plastic cup of water in front of me and took a slow sip. It tasted metallic, slightly warm, like it had been sitting in old courthouse pipes since the building first opened in 1974. I set it down carefully, making sure it didn't make a sound, because silence, in my family, was never seen as strength. It was always taken as guilt. My father, Edward Cross, stood tall at the front of the courtroom, holding a manila folder like it was proof of everything he'd ever believed about me. His face burned red with certainty. His voice filled every inch of the room. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that inside my attorney's briefcase sat a sealed, black envelope that would unravel everything he'd just said. But not yet. Edward Cross had spent 30 years building power in this county. He was the man who decided which roads got paved, which families mattered, and which ones didn't. In his world, I was the daughter who abandoned everything, the one who left the farm for a quiet, invisible life in Washington, D.C. She's a ghost, he told the jury. Ask anyone in this town. She hasn't been seen here in 15 years. She claims she works for some logistics firm, but there's no office, no proof, nothing. A pause. A calculated one. She lived off her mother, and now that her mother is gone, she's back to take what's left. I glanced toward the gallery. My younger sister, Claire, sat there in a soft designer cardigan, one I had quietly paid for years ago. Her eyes were lowered, her expression perfectly fragile. She played her role well. The loyal daughter, the victim. For months, my father had fed her a version of me that made his story easier to believe, and she had accepted it. Inside me, there was no chaos, no rage, just precision. The same cold focus I used in rooms no one here would ever be cleared to enter. Miss Cross, the opposing attorney, Harold Bennett, said with a smug smile, "Can you provide any proof of employment? A pay stub? A tax record? Anything at all?" I looked at him calmly. "I work in operations analysis," I said. "My clients require discretion. The records exist. Your inability to access them is not my failure, it's your limitation." My father laughed. A sharp, dismissive sound. "Discretion?" He scoffed. "You were a paper pusher, Isabella. Don't dress laziness up with fancy words." My fingers brushed the silver phoenix pin on my lapel. He had no idea. While he argued about crop prices at the diner, I sat in secured rooms making decisions that shifted entire regions of the world. For 15 years, I had lived in silence, not for myself, but for something bigger. And that silence had a cost. When the farm nearly collapsed in 2018, Edward thought a private grant saved it. It wasn't a grant. It was $136. Zero of my own earnings moved quietly through channels he would never understand. Claire's master's degree? That was me too. My mother's treatments when insurance failed? Also me. I had been the invisible foundation of their lives. And now they were using that invisibility as proof I didn't exist. "Your mother included an employment clause in her trust," Bennett pressed. "Was that because she knew you were unreliable?" "My mother understood my work better than anyone here," I replied, my voice steady. "That clause wasn't punishment. It was protection." My father barked out another laugh. "You weren't protecting anything. You were hiding because you had nothing. I leaned forward slightly. This isn't about money, Edward, I said quietly. It's about control. You couldn't control who I became, so you rewrote my story. The room stilled. Bennett quickly pivoted, calling Claire to the stand. She stepped forward, voice trembling just enough. She disappeared for months, Claire said softly. And after Mom got sick, I found withdrawals, thousands of dollars, signatures that didn't look right, forgery that was their final move. The jury shifted, their eyes turning colder to them. I wasn't a daughter. I was a thief, Your Honor, Bennett said dramatically. We submit evidence of fraud and request immediate review. The room felt heavy, but I didn't look at my father. I didn't look at the jury. I looked at my attorney. Is that all? I asked. My father stood. You've been caught, Isabella. Sit down. The judge snapped, but his eyes were no longer on him. They were on me. On the Phoenix pin. My attorney, Daniel Reeves, stood calmly and opened his briefcase. Your Honor, he said, the plaintiff's investigation is thorough, but it is searching for a person who is not permitted to exist in public records. He placed a sealed black envelope on the bench, stamped with gold. The room shifted. Instantly, a limited disclosure has been authorized, he continued. This document verifies my client's employment and service. The judge froze. Carefully, he opened it. He read once, then again. The silence became suffocating. When he finally looked up, everything had changed. This court has received verified documentation from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, he said slowly. My father's confidence shattered. It confirms that Isabella Cross has served for 15 years as a senior operations director within the Central Intelligence Agency. The room went cold, not quiet, cold. The absence of records, the judge continued, is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of classified excellence. My father stared at me like he didn't know who I was. Because he didn't. He never had. The case collapsed within minutes, dismissed, sanctions issued, damages awarded. But none of that mattered. Isabella, my father whispered, we didn't know. I stood. You weren't supposed to know everything, I said, but you were supposed to know me. I walked past him without stopping. The money for the farm, I added quietly. That was me. I didn't do it for you. I did it for Mom. And that debt is now paid. Outside, the courthouse air felt different, cleaner, lighter for the first time in years. I wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's version of me. I got into my car and looked at the Phoenix pin in the mirror. Then I took it off, placed it back in its case. For 15 years, I had been a ghost, invisible, silent, but not anymore. Because I wasn't just part of the story they told about me, I was finally writing my own.